all at our dinner table. This has been an amazing weekend. So first, I want to shout out Joyce Leanne for organizing Sensing History via the Legacy Project 2020. Everybody, some virtual snaps for Joyce. I also want to shout out all of the participants from yesterday and today, from our young people to our elders that participated in these amazing events. If you have not been able to participate throughout the weekend, videos will be up soon enough for you to catch the recap. So before we really get started in the conversational part of the dinner, I wanted to kind of ground you all in why I'm here and hosting this dinner. So I was formerly the community engagement manager at Weeksville Heritage Center. And during my time, Obden, who's also on the live with us, and myself created a project called Meals as Collective Memory. We were really interested in collecting the stories of Black restaurateurs in Central Brooklyn, as well as stories around Black foodways in this community. So before we kind of kick off the convo, Obden, if you want to share a little more about the project and then lead into the clips.
Yes, so hi, my name is Obden. I am the oral history manager at Weeksville. And as Stephanie mentioned, we're able to conduct this really great oral history project that included public programs around Black-owned restaurants. So we interviewed Black-owned restaurants in Central Brooklyn and had them talk about their experiences and how they got to open their spaces. And during the process of providing the vouchers to the community, we were able to collect some interviews in that sense. So I do have like 3 clips too from this week, where one of the main questions that we asked folks was a family recipe that they are really proud of, or a family dish that they are really excited about. And like we got a lot of responses, but like I'm only gonna provide like 2 of the best ones that we really enjoyed listening to. So these were folk that came in, got their voucher to help prepare their meal. And we asked them the very simple question of like, what's a family dish that you really enjoy? So I'm gonna play this first one from Rashida Fitch. And the first thing I'm gonna do is share my audio, and then give me a thumbs up if you can hear the clip. So, and then,
And then you gonna tell me your first and last name?
Rashida Fitch.
And today's date is
10/20 what, 2?
yeah 10/22.
20.
And could you tell me of a family recipe that you are fond of?
Potato salad.
What's in it?
Well, in my potato salad, I don't know if we should be recording this because my grandmother gonna come up out her grave and grab me down into it. But I'll tell you a little bit about my potato salad. My potato salad consists of potatoes, celery, green, chopped greens, what do you call it? Bell pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, relish, mayonnaise, mustard, eggs. And my other ingredients, I mean, I can't even tell you what I put in there to bring that potato salad out, punch in your face.
Okay. And do you remember the first time you encountered the dish?
The first time I encountered
The dish, like the first time you ate it.
the dish,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I was like 3, maybe 2 years old. Yeah, it was my all-time love, my favorite.
Cool. And then, are you okay if we use this recording for a public?
No, I don't mind, but I'm pretty sure they don't want to hear what all that I had to say.
No, I think people will be excited.
No, I don't mind.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
that was one of the first clips that we were able to collect. And here comes the second one with Tanya Johnson.
All right. So, could you tell me your first and last name?
Tanya Johnson.
And could you tell me of a family recipe that you're fond of?
Favorite recipe? My mother's chocolate and pineapple cake.
What was so good about it?
It's so moist, and she just puts her foot in it. It's delicious.
Do you remember the first time you had it?
When I was younger, yeah. So everybody likes it. They always want her to make the pineapple one. Chocolate one as well, but you know, the pineapple one is a little bit much better. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you okay if we use this recording
Sure.
for the website?
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm only just realizing that both participants said that, part of making the dish is that they have to put their foot in it, which, I just think is a really fascinating terminology and also strong, and like you really have to put in the work to make the dish brilliant or like come out to eat. So yeah, those are some of my initial thoughts on that. But yeah, so those were the oral histories or the brief interviews that we collected during the voucher giveaway. And it's very strongly related to a lot of the work we did with collecting the interviews for the Meals as Collective Memory Project, where we interviewed like cooks and restaurateurs and them talking about their first experiences of cooking and family dishes that they found really important to them.
And so as Ogden said, Meals as Collective Memory, the project, we partner with Kingsborough Houses, which is directly across from Weeksville Heritage Center. And we gave away $150 gift cards to community members so that they could participate in this weekend to cook with us or just cook for themselves. I know some folks said they were saving it for Thanksgiving. So, just being able to continue to build with community, even if we can't be together as we normally would in Weeksville at a table together. That was just some way that we felt that we could be an extension of what we would normally do in our space with our neighbors directly across the street from us. So as we ask those questions to community members, we also want to ask the same of you that are here in this space. So don't be afraid to speak up. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you have any questions or anything you would like to add. But I would like to bring into the conversation two other folks who are so amazing, who are like trailblazing in the Black Foodways community. And they're so brilliant. So I'm really going to just let them talk because they can talk about themselves and way better than I can because I'll just gush and be a fangirl. So I want to introduce Therese Nelson from Black Culinary and Omar Tate. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves, and then we can launch into the convo.
Omar, you can go. I don't know.
Yeah, I unmuted myself and saw that you did it at the same time, so I just like for a second. So I'm Omar Tate. I'm a chef and an artist and a writer and probably too many other things to name. But all those things kind of filter into my practice of not only just preservation of Black foodways and Black culture, but just also amplifying and telling more nuanced stories of our existence. And like, I mean, I really appreciate what Ogden just shared in terms of like the nuance that I specifically speak of people, of us rather, not people, but us, collecting meals as memory, collecting our culture as memory, collecting our family heritage as memory, and keeping that with us. I thought that both those clips were really beautiful. So with Honeysuckle, Honeysuckle is now, well, it began as a dinner series, but is now more of like a brand and a platform that displays multiple avenues of ways to practice this sort of preservation, both commercially and internally through arts, through commerce, through food, through material culture. And so today, working with Weeksville, who I hold very near and dear to my heart, having lived in Brooklyn, having lived in New York for 8 years, in Crown Heights, Weeksville is just an amazing place. And as soon as Joyce reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do this, I said, absolutely. So what I'm sharing today are 4 recipes: hibiscus cake, fried chicken, collard greens with peanut and tomato, and okra rice with crab. All of these things, just to touch on them really quickly, fried chicken is obviously just like a classic dish that I think a lot of us, well, all of us know, but a lot of us take for granted in terms of what that dish actually holds for us, both contemporarily and historically. Pound cake being a quintessential dessert that we all share and love, with hibiscus icing. The hibiscus to me being transitorial in terms of like it being here, it being represented in the West Indies, it being represented back on the mother continent of Africa. It's traveled with us through centuries, through half a millennia, as an essential ingredient in teas. But here it's displayed as just like a color and flavoring agent. Greens is another, stew greens is just another one. If you look at the basically like the African way of eating, it always begins with greens, and we still do that now. So I wanted to use collard greens, mustards, and turnips, which are really familiar to us as Americans, as Black Americans, but stew them with peanut and tomato, which is very West African. So I wanted to bring both of those worlds together, bridging the continents. And then with the okra rice with crab, that is very, very, very Charleston, where historically my ancestors are from Charleston. But again, reaching across the continent with the rice culture of West Africa, Charleston and the surrounding areas was a international hub, and economically prosperous hub for American prosperity in the rice culture, and that it was enslaved Africans were specifically brought here to grow that rice. And so with my heritage being of Charleston, by way of the Great Migration and kind of like trying to reconnect over the past couple of years, I learned about this dish and I wanted to share that with everyone. So I won't take up too much more time. I know we want to get to talking, and we need to hear from Therese, but yeah, I really hope that everyone had the opportunity to at least read, if not try and enjoy these dishes. They are very special. They are very community driven. They are very of our collective memory as descendants of longtime descendants of the mother continent. So thank you all for having me.
Yeah, all that was brilliant. I think this menu is so interesting. Yeah, I just by way of introduction, I'm Therese Nelson. I'm a chef, a writer, and in January we'll be 12 years old. I started to study Black culinary history, really kind of as a way to think more critically about the work I was doing as a chef, and ways to infuse history and culture into my work. I think we were in a time back then where I don't know that a lot of Black chefs were thinking critically about how we show up fully in a professional space. And I wanted to sort of interrogate that. And over the years, it's been a way to build community and I don't know, just be connected with people who were like-minded and just adding dope brown things to a very white space.
So I kind of want to jump the conversation off with something that Omar said, talking about the hibiscus plant and foods that travel. So funny enough, after Obden and I got the go ahead to do Meals as Collective Memory, I started like doing a lot of reading and research, and I wound up getting a tattoo of like different foods that exist in the Americas, the Caribbean, and Africa. And so, because what's nerdier than getting a tattoo of your project at work, right? So if anyone wanted to kind of take on like some of the routes that certain favorite foods that we all love here in the States that have taken from Africa to the Caribbean here, if anybody kind of wants to take on some of those foods.
I mean, I can start, but I mean, so I think Omar really did an excellent job of sort of curating the menu that touched on so much of it. I think I mean, we get into individual foods. I mean, okra, tomatoes, hibiscus, peanuts. One of the things I guess was struck by as well with his menu was the greens dish, specifically because I don't know if you all remember, it would have been 3 or 4 years ago. Whole Foods, I think it was, did an article. Like they posted on their website this dish that was like this kind of okra. I mean, I think it was like I think it was a collard green dish, and it was like a collard green salad, and it had peanuts and some other things in it. And the backlash these people got for doing this dish was insane. And it was so interesting because it was a lot of Black folks who were like, we don't eat that. What do you mean? That's, that's not our kind of dish. And it was striking because that combination of a dark leafy green, some kind of collard, some kind of green, right? And peanuts and tomatoes is that is quintessential West Africa. And so I think it's interesting the way that Omar, and certainly I do as well, think about the way we express our foodways, because so much of it is diffusion, right? Like these dishes, the movement of people make the movement of food. And so dishes that have roots that are so clear, if you go to Senegal, you go to Nigeria, like these tastes are like on the streets and even to this day. And so they travel, of course, through the slave trade, right? Through the Caribbean to America. And you find places like Charleston specifically, or places like, I don't know, Charleston becomes this really quintessential place because of its sort of coastal position, but like you find the exact same dish and it is preserved in the flavor of it, but then through migration, by forgetting history, by diffusion, all of a sudden we don't have connection to the fact that these are literal dishes in our marrow. Like, how do you not? And so I don't know, it's something as simple as appreciating okra, appreciating that these greens and these peanuts belong together. They are in the same basket of ingredients.
Part of the reason why I made this dish is like, I think we don't really understand the idea of oppression and food as being the one thing that we absolutely had to have. I mean, even the enslavers understood that we had to eat because enslaved Africans were literal machines. And so if we were literal machines and the one thing that we had at least a little bit of autonomy over was our cuisine and how we prepared it, there were these constant reminders of home, okra being one of them, peanut being another. We can bring in the conversation of hibiscus. We can bring in the conversation of how we prepare our greens, one pot meals, 3 rocks in a cast iron pot. We can bring these things up. The disconnect is that I don't think that through time, because of oral traditions and because of the notion that, not notion, but the fact that we weren't allowed to read and write, and if we displayed that, then that's death. There is no recorded reminder for us to go back to read and say, hey, this is us, this is Africa, we came from Africa, this is our trajectory, this is our history. And so the backlash of something like peanuts in a peanut sauce in collard greens, or just greens in general, or a peanut stew or a peanut soup, to me, is because of just the fact that we just don't know. We literally just don't know. And there's this assimilation is just too trite of a word, but there was a forced assimilation, that occurred, that is still occurring, with every step of the way through the evolution of Black identity and Black culture. I wanted to make this menu to kind of remind us spiritually of these connections. I feel like these tables that we serve, and I know we haven't gotten here yet, Stephanie, but I want to bring in the conversation of what we do as African Americans, as descendants of Africa. What we do after public congregation is to remind us why we're congregating. And so okra, peanut, tomato, hibiscus is reminding us that we have this existential connection to something greater than ourselves. And that's where this menu kind of came from.
Yeah, there was an event yesterday called the Future of the Black Archive, and I forgot which panelist said it, but they said that our bodies hold the archive. And so, in thinking about tonight and thinking about the menu that was created, I was like, well, the dishes are the archive too, right? And so, you know, like right now, it's so much talk about the Gullah Islands and how, you know, that community is being gentrified, and the young folks, you know, they don't want to be country, so they're leaving to go to Charleston or wherever else. And there's so much fear around the flattening of the actual land, but thinking about the ways in which that food culture will continue to live through all of us on the East Coast. Because if you're from Philly, Jersey, New York, Baltimore, you know, DC, some folks, like, you are Carolinian. And so, like, the way we eat our rice and all that, those are all things that we brought with us. And so even though the place may no longer be there, we're still carrying that story through the way that we cook our food.
So I would push back a little bit, slightly, on the notion about people leaving, mainly because there are so many people, Charleston specifically, Omar and I, you know, good friends, people like BJ Dennis, people like Sally Ann Robinson, people like Charlotte Jenkins are in Charleston trying to stand their ground in that way, right? And so I think there's certainly this notion about it. I think sometimes we put our imagination onto places like Charleston and sort of talk through some of the things happening down there. With, I mean, very real things in terms of gentrification, in terms of, like, especially the Sea Islands being so attractive to development. But there are projects happening. Moment Heritage Center is a very, very new project, but one that is encouraging in that they are thinking really critically about St. Helena Island, Johns Island, trying to work to sort of stand in their cultural ground. And so people like BJ, who's, you know, our age, and sort of thinking about what it means to stay home and what it means to sort of be an ambassador for a place, it's super encouraging. I think that more of that is happening. I just think we have to give ourselves maybe some grace in terms of the amount of time it's going to take to sort of get other folks to buy in.
Yeah, and I just briefly wanted to piggyback on some of what Omar discussed in regards to the passing down of recipes through oral tradition and how some things are lost. But, like, there's, you know, within Black community, like, there is this necessity, especially when you're thinking about history in the past, to use your imagination to repair some of what's been lost. So, like, you know, you don't have the recipe written down verbatim on a piece of paper, but, like, I think there's this wonderful elasticity where it's like we have these ingredients. There has been this, like, knowledge transfer, hopefully from one generation to another, to how to continue this. And then, like, not to jump ahead into some of the questions, but, like,
No, let's go.
Okay, yeah. So there's, like, there has to be the acceptance that, like, everything's on its way to becoming, like, everything's constantly evolving when you're, like, working with food. So, like, yeah, one of the things I was thinking in preparation for today is, like, what are some of the dishes that, like, I'm able to continue, and or, like, my cooking methods and how it's changed from my mother. Well, I was gonna say my mom and my dad, but I'm gonna be honest, just my mom. And just, like, you know, because she came from Haiti, and, like, she learned how to cook from basically a community of, like, her, like, matriarch, like, she knows how to do things a certain way and only that way. And, like, I have a particular understanding of how to cook, and, like, that's going to be part of that evolution. So, like, obviously there's, like, a happy in between of, like, having written recipes and, like, the oral practice, or, like, the physical transfer of knowledge from one person to another by, like, just watching how someone cooks and, like, kind of memorizing it through, like, the act of doing it. And yeah, I think that dynamic is worth thinking about in regards to memory and how things change over time.
Mm-hmm.
So to Ogden's point, if some folks would like to share some legacy dishes that are in your family, like Miss Fitch talked about the potato salad that her grandma made that was passed down. So does anybody want to share some meals that are like special to their family? Don't be shy now. We family at the dinner table.
I kind of want to go back to that interview. I mean, that interview, as short as it was, and I'm not even sure if that was the whole interview, was so packed and loaded. I really like. Just for a quick second, I kind of want to unpack that interview. Where first of all, she said that you asked her when you asked both when do you remember having that dish, the first time having that dish.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of them can remember, and I think that's super important because I mean, even as you were asking that question and she was answering that question, in my head, if I had to guess, it was when potato salad was made, probably directly the summer after she was born or the summer that she was born into, her mother chewing it up and spitting it into her mouth. You know what I mean? Like the memory begins from birth, you know? And so an oral tradition doesn't even begin with language to me. It begins with taste because I can only speak for my upbringing. And like, I'm a father of a 13-year-old. I chewed food up and gave it to my son so it was easier for him to digest when he was a baby, and so did his mother, you know? So I think that that's not anything to just kind of like gloss over. And then beyond that, she said, even if I were to tell you, my grandmother would come out of her grave and snatch me into it.
Mm-hmm.
Which says to me that A, she's not even confident that she's doing it the correct way. And B, there's a saying that goes, if I told you, I'd have to kill you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the legacy of like, to me, it speaks to the legacy of Black record keeping, and that it's almost always in here as in the mind. I don't know if everyone can see me, in the mind and in the brain of ourselves and in our bodies, because that's where we always had to keep it since we've been in this country. You know what I mean? I think that there's something to be said about Joyce earlier saying that, oh, I tried to make the greens, but I messed it up because the recipes that I wrote down, I've never had to record these recipes. I only just make them. And so maybe what I wrote wasn't entirely true because it's mostly coming from my body. You know what I mean? Like seriously. And like, I wasn't trying to throw anyone off, but our ancestors were trying to throw people off. You know, I really believe in spiritual transit and spiritual truths, and that, you know, again, the fact that we weren't able to record our histories, and the fact that we wanted to own something, and food was one of the only things that we could own. We never told the full truth of what our food was. And I wasn't trying to lie to you, Joyce.
No, I didn't think that you were. I think you were saying something that I'm checking on my delivery. Okay, my food's almost here, y'all. So I remember when we had a meeting to talk about this, you were saying how you didn't even some of the things, and I know Akima Zane, not to call her, but I know that she told me too. Like I remember I was cooking one time at her house, and she was like, I was very much using the measuring cups and all of these things that she is able to eye. And so what does it mean for you to be asked to record what it is that you do in a certain way, in a way that isn't the natural way for you to record it? And so I just thought it was interesting because when you were cooking in your own, like the cooking demo that you created almost becomes like a more truer record of the menu, because you're in your actual kitchen and you're preparing it. So you're just feeling it in that moment. So the reason I went back to the menus, I started cooking and I was following you, but then I was like getting too overwhelmed by trying to like follow at the same pace as you. And so you were like, okay, and then add the spices. And I was like, what spices? You didn't say nothing about no spices. That don't look like salt and pepper and red pepper flakes. That looks like some orange stuff and something else. You didn't say nothing about that in there. So I went back to the thing and I was like, let me just follow what this is saying. And so you had said put the peanut butter at the top. So anywho, all that to say, I think it speaks to what we're talking about around, you know, the ways in which you learned by being in the kitchen with your elders, or learned by like things being passed down through oral, through cite through, different ways of memory. They're not written down in maybe that same kind of way, but I also was the only person washing dishes. So maybe that's why, I didn't know how to ad lib.
Well, I don't know. Also, don't you think it's like once somebody takes a recipe, it's theirs, right? Like there's also this thing about preciousness about like written recipes that feels like ahistoric, like it feels, I don't know, like antithetical to like, I don't know, the way our culture is and the way it should be, right? Like you take these recipes that you remember, like the second woman who talked about her mom's cakes, right? There's some ways in which you would never want to make a recipe for her chocolate cake or her coconut cake or her, whatever, which is pineapple cake. Like people wouldn't ask her mother for that recipe. They want her to make it. Like you make the cake and we'll come, because it's that celebration, that taste. Like I don't ever need the recipe. I need your actual hands in that particular pie. And so I don't know, just from a culinary standpoint, but certainly from a cultural standpoint, I feel like most recipes are sort of about technique and about kind of giving people a framework, but it's going to be different once you use your seasoning salt, your favorite collection of ingredients. Like you might not like tomatoes, dietary, like you might have dietary restrictions, so you might not use the crab, and the rice will be, it'll be just a different thing. But once it's in your hands, it's inherently going to be a different thing. But it's all in that same canon, I think.
And I just want to share from some folks around the table. So Monifa, she shared her family is from St. Kitts, and a special meal in her family is okra fungi. Also, Sharice Francis, she's from the Caribbean, and half her family is from Barbados. And so she has dishes like bakes, which I love. Okra fungi. And in Barbados, dishes like bakes, which are fried dough balls, codfish, is it pronounced cooch, okra cornmeal dish? You can just let me know how that spells, and I want to be correct. And pilau, which is mixed meat and rice. Sharice's father is from Dominica, and red bean and dumpling stew. Cuckoo, so okay, it was a typo. Okay, cuckoo, the okra cornmeal dish from Barbados, and from Dominica, the red bean and dumpling stew. And so, Omar, you said oral history begins with taste. And that's something really interesting that came across in the oral histories that we were doing through Meals as Collective Memory, because, a certain smell or a taste of a certain food would trigger people's memories to the specificity of a place, right? So they would say like, oh, when I had this stew, it reminded me of being in my grandmother's kitchen doing XYZ. So if Obden, if you could like share a little bit more about the oral history that we collected from the restaurateurs, and how another thing that was interesting in these conversations were that a lot of them said that they didn't grow up eating out, that they ate mostly at home. And so we think about place, we think about our homes. You can kind of share a little bit more about those oral histories.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to speak a little bit about it. And I have one that I can probably line up and share it, because I've been listening to some of the interviews over again, just because some of the narrators were so amazing, like Sabrina Brockman of Grand Champ, and Cheryl from Cheryl's Global Soul. Like, I don't have favorites, but those are interviews where I experienced a lot within those conversations. And like, sticking with Cheryl, one of the things that she mentioned a lot in her interviews, or in her interview, was like, because she grew up in like a predominantly white neighborhood, she would go over to people's houses, and then like, a friend, this is an anecdote that she shared, where like a friend was like, a friend's mom would be like, oh yeah, dinner's almost ready. And then she would smell nothing. And like, she's just like, I'm not staying for this. So it's really fascinating how powerful like the senses are in regards to memory. And like, I love that like this entire program has been called like Sensing History, because like you have history which you know, it's based on evidence and like the triangulation of evidence, but a lot of it is written and like official record, and memory is something that can be considered along the same lines as history, but like it comes directly from the senses, right? So like, and is not passed down with like written documents usually. So I guess where I'm trying to go with that is that like it's really great to hear about like the memories triggered. And then in regards to like eating out, as you mentioned, a lot of the native New Yorkers, or a lot of the people who we interviewed were older than 40, did talk about like not going out that often, but talking about like the major differences, like with the culture of eating out in Brooklyn and what it was like. And that like it didn't happen, like you didn't go out to eat that often. Like a wonderful thing that Sabrina said was with Haitian food, almost felt pointed to eat out, just like eating with family or having the home cooked experience was like a major part of it. And that really resonated with me. And she also mentioned, like within the same interview, which I'm probably going to go and find, that there's also like the issue of a performance when you go to a restaurant, because you're like, whose experience are you buying into when you go here? And there's this act of being seen or like being within someone else's gaze of like, do I have to act right while I'm eating at this place? And how am I being judged? So I think those things were really interesting when you're talking to like these Black-owned restaurateurs, and like for them, it seemed like there was like this strong importance of making the spaces feel very accessible to anyone that wants to come in there, and like making a community space, right? So like making that third place for everyone, but like making sure it's accessible for everyone, and that there's a lot of like some form of community outreach, right? So like Sabrina Brockman and Grand Shop, they have the CSA coming out and they do a lot of really great programming. You can say the same thing for La Cou Cafe. I know that the Brooklyn Tea also has a space where people can come in and hang out, and like they do a lot of programming that way. So I guess those are the things like I'm thinking about with these oral histories that we're able to collect in regards to like creating community space in these commodified places, but like just trying to make it much more accessible for people.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, go ahead, Omar.
Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of want to touch on something that you touched on earlier in this portion of your conversation, Open, where you mentioned food sharing is culture sharing. Especially like, I mean, it's apparent to me that we're having conversations with several people throughout the diaspora who are representing their different islands or places of origin. Me specifically, as like a Black American, one of the things that was like really difficult for me was to understand place of origin. So like there was this one experience where in middle school I was asked to do like a potluck, and I grew up Black Muslim, and I told my mom about it, and she made this dish for me that was specific to Islam, but not specific to Black culture, that we were eating called couscous. And I was like, and my mom started making couscous, and I was like really embarrassed to bring it to school. I probably would have been more comfortable bringing fried chicken to school, but she didn't want me to bring fried chicken to school because it was like Black. You know, Black, like there was a stigma about it. And something that I've always been kind of like jealous of growing up is that Black folks from other countries, islands, whatever, they were able to bring their culture into a place or into a location because of the strength of identity from a Haiti or from a Jamaica. Like Jamaica's jerk chicken, you know, Haiti has several dishes, you know, chicken and sauce or John or whatever, and then we can go on and on and on. But as a Black American, it was difficult for me to find that dish. That's part of how honeysuckle became to be. But I kind of want to touch on that aspect, because I also understand that immigrants have throughout the diaspora also feel the same way that I feel in terms of like, oh, I don't want to bring this food to the school that I'm going to because, you know, it stinks, it's funky, it's weird or whatever, you know. I think that it's a really interesting thing.
One thing I want to lift up, because Odin, you talked about talking to Cheryl Smith. I mean, I think we need to collectively as a community lift up Cheryl Smith much more than we do. She, in terms of her impact on food media and visibility of Black food culture, has been exponential. I mean, I remember being in culinary school and seeing her on Food Network, and it was transformational. It was this sense that somebody was talking about Black culture and Black foodways on television. You're talking about the time where, you know, PBS was really the only place that had any expansive food culture in sort of a media landscape, and Food Network was just beginning. And Cheryl Smith and Tanya Holland on Food Network talking about Black foodways, talking about the Caribbean, talking about these foodways with a language that we weren't quite ready yet. I'm not sure if the zeitgeist was quite ready for. You know, the bombast of Cheryl Smith and her messaging, but I think that it did what it was supposed to do in terms of planting a seed for us to have inkling that there was something more there. I struggle a lot professionally as well with this notion of, does the zeitgeist deserve our foodways in restaurant settings? Because I don't know that they translate directly. I wonder about what it is to sort of contort our culture into a model that doesn't even serve, you know, sort of American foodways. The models that exist, if COVID has taught us nothing else, it taught us that restaurants themselves are a risky, precarious, and really particular framework. And I'm unsure that, I don't know, it just feels sometimes like we lift up restaurant spaces as the only place where our foodways are valuable cross cultures. And honestly, they aren't, all right? Like your sense memory of your grandma's, whatever, the way in which you think about the flavors of your culture, whatever that looks like, are much more powerful than most restaurant experiences that you'll have. And I don't know, it just feels interesting when you talk to chefs, like modern chefs on the continent who are thinking about, and you think about that professionally, right? They also are thinking about transforming what restaurants even mean, right? Omar's work specifically, right? He's been using the pop-up space almost exclusively, but I think it's really, this is the moment where we have opportunity professionally to sort of dismantle a lot of the issues that restaurants have that don't serve us. And I think that if we look to our culture specifically, we find way better models that may serve our not just our professional lives, but our foodways much better. So I don't know. But yeah, lift up Cheryl Smith. She's a pioneer.
Yeah, we were lucky enough, Ogden and myself, last year to have Cheryl Smith in conversation with Tanya Hopkins, who's here at the dinner table with us, to talk about Black foodways. And like, first of all, it was the funniest conversation I ever heard in my life. Like, I was like tears streaming down my face because they were just like, it was like we weren't even there. It was just homegirls hanging out and talking. But also just understanding, like, when I came into this project, Meals Collective Memory, I don't think I ever really thought so deeply about food and like what food means to our culture and how it informs our culture. So, you know, I'm definitely want to co-sign the upliftment of Cheryl Smith because that conversation changed a lot of things for me and also helped reshape how I even looked at the project that we were doing. And again, shout out to Tanya Hopkins here at the table with us from the Food Griot. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, y'all. Hey.
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 I want to lift up some comments as well. Jessica at the table is from the Gulf Coast. So family dishes were seafood based. So gumbo, seafood dressing, and stuffed bell peppers. I need to hear about this seafood dressing a little more. That sounds bomb. Sia also said that they grew up Black Muslim as well, largely vegetarian. And their mom used to make barbecue shiitake mushrooms that a lot of people in our religious community said reminded them of when they used to eat pork.
Yo, so like something that doesn't get talked about a lot is that the Black Muslim community across America is the largest Muslim community in America, and we can hate on Minister Louis Farrakhan all we want, and Elijah Muhammad and all that, but like beyond religion, it was very transformative to Black identity in general and the way that we eat. And so when I was growing up, much like Sia said, you know, my mom cooked vegetarian. We let me back up. We started out Baptist because my family is very rooted in the Black church, especially as they came from the South, and my great grandparents were pianists and organists and like all the holy things that were going on in terms of like Black church. But my mom she converted us to Islam when I was like about 4 or 5 years old, and it completely changed the way we ate. We stopped eating pork. I distinctly remember being confused about like why like everything changed. No more pork, no more sweet potatoes. We started eating like lots and lots of turkey. Bean pie became a thing in our family. White beans were a big thing in our family. Soups with white beans and like vegetables and things like that became a thing in our family. But then she separated from the Nation of Islam, and we became Sunni Muslim, which is where like the couscous aspect came from. She started to adopt Middle Eastern ideas of eating into our food culture. So sesame oil became a thing, and amino acids with greens became a thing. So you know, there's a big piece of this like conversion of identity missing, which I explore through honeysuckle, through a lot of the dishes or some of the dishes that I do, where this notion of not just healthier eating but healthier spirit through religion, through politics, through self-affirming identity, creates a new Black America for people, and the food was at the center of it.
You also think, Omar, because there's something also powerful about thinking about the Nation of Islam in terms of just their thoughts around food source, like the food system as a whole, right? Like I think about people like Rashid Nuri, like their growing program was one of the most revolutionary things. I mean, like they were thinking about how we control the food system and food source. You know, was it, he said 1,500 acres in Georgia fed the country like that. I mean, that's in a moment of COVID, in a moment of us sort of reconsidering how we engage the food system. I mean, the nation got some best practices we might want to look at, right?
I mean, like we can look into organizations like the Nation of Islam where they actually started their own farm. They have several hundred.
That's right.
In Georgia right now, still existing right now. The Black Panthers were working off the same models of revolution that the Nation of Islam founded in the 50s.
We don't have school lunch program without the Panthers,
right.
Like,
you know what I mean? So you know, these are parts of the American Black experience conversation that the entire diaspora should be a part of, because this is also simultaneously happening with Black migration from places like Haiti, from places like Jamaica, from places like West Africa, where there were where these migrations were happening because of the idea of American prosperity and the imagined idea of what the actual Civil Rights Act brought to Black America, which was nowhere near what they thought it was in the 70s. You know, it just wasn't that. So you know, if we had 5 hours, we could talk about it, but we don't. But I just want to make it clear and bring this to the forefront of people's minds that where we are now, situated with the diversity of Black foodways, is a distinct and stark a shift of identity because of organizations like the Nation of Islam, because of the Black Panther. Bobby Seale was a chef. He has cookbooks out. He was a chef. He started writing cookbooks in the late 80s and the early 90s of him of specific techniques. Bobby Seale grills, Bobby Seale sears. You know, like, because he
email Bobby Seale. He will talk to you about his culinary ways. Yes,
it's amazing. Everyone looks at who died and who and not who survived from the Black Panther movement. Bobby Seale survived. He rescinded his public image and became a chef. And no one knows about these books. They're very rare, but they are still founded in the clarity and identity of Black health. You know, so there's just a lot more to be explored, and I'm glad that this is coming up in this conversation.
I wanted to talk really quickly about Black Muslim food culture in Philly, because if anybody knows about Philly, like, you know, even if you are Baptist, like something about you, whether it be your name or it's gonna be Muslim. So for me, I grew up, I know you'll remember this, Omar, I grew up eating at Garden of Bilal. Garden of Bilal fed my family. Like Sunday dinners, like most people, their grandmas is frying chicken and all that. No, we having fish cheesesteaks, fish hoagies, I mean, and we having fish fried rice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And some bean pies. And you know, I grew up at Zion Baptist Church at Broadnery, so like legacy Baptist, but like we ate at Garden of Bilal. Remember they had the drive-through too on Broad Street?
Of course. I mean, you know, like there's not enough like credit towards like how Black Baptist culture became a part of Muslim culture. You know, the women in the congregation of Muslim organizations became the cooks and started cooking foods that reminded us of our church heritage, but was more like kind of like a neo version of heritage, where, you know, braised greens with turkey neck, you know what I mean? Like that's the jam. Fried fish hoagies, that's the jam. If you go to Philly right now, salmon cheesesteaks don't happen without Black Muslims. What the hell is a salmon cheesesteak? Who eats salmon with cheese? Only Black people from Philadelphia. Right. You know, and they put the chopped bell peppers and onions in it, just like we use in Holy Trinity. You know, so like it's all transformative information that goes into the evolution of our foodways. And I'm so glad that you brought these things up, because like, I mean, even me personally, like if I'm being completely honest, I never felt the sense of community that I desired to have from that I saw from afar from the Black church in the Black Muslim community. And that's more complicated than you know we should talk about, but like Islam still it separates people from like in gender and all these different things, but like my family, they own churches, they're deacons, they're this and they're that. There's something about the communal aspect of an after church service that I find to be very, very organizing in an organic way. Where people are just kind of like eating fried chicken, and then they're eating the chicken and like, you know what? I'm tired of this shit. Like, I'm tired of being oppressed, and then like that becomes the conversation. You know, that doesn't happen. That didn't happen in my Muslim community. So I wanted that.
So for the folks around the table, if you could share with us some of the meals that you remember eating after church, whether you went on Sundays or Saturdays, if you was in folks that was there Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, if you could just share in the comments, or if you want to turn your camera on and turn your mic on and share some of the meals that y'all had after church.
Yeah. I was one of the folks that we attended on Saturday. I was raised Seventh-day Adventist in East Flatbush. So like my entire community, East Flatbush, I always joke like 90% of the Haitians I know are probably Seventh-day Adventist. And you know, my favorite part about attending church was like waiting to go to the basement and eat and eat with everybody, because like the Seventh-day Adventist religion, for some reason, like ingrained in it is this idea of potluck, of like eating with the congregation after church. So it's not like everyone has to take turns in making dishes. So like there is like this democratic act that happens, and like really good organization in like getting the food ready. Like the churches I grew up in weren't that organized above the basement, but like when it was time to eat, no problems whatsoever. Everyone knew what they were making, and like there's a beauty in communing, right? There is like Black unity, but communing is one of those things that is an actual act. Like you have to like do it, and like it's happening, and like you can't really deny that. And like some of the foods that we'd eat, would be legume, which is like braised vegetables, jean, which is like black rice, where the rice is made black from a particular mushroom that we have, macaroni with the peppers, Omar. So it's dishes like that. And yeah, I feel like I wish I could go back in time and like still eat in those basements, like, cause like I'll go to Haitian restaurants and try the food, and even with my favorite ones, it's not the same, right? It's not like the church aunt who made it, and like she knew that her family, like her extended family, was gonna have it. So yeah, those are like some of the dishes that we'd eat, after church, and like, you know, stuff like that was like really beautiful. Like the other joke I have about the Seventh-day Adventist Church is like, it's like at least 8 hours like every weekend. So like when people tell me like they're religious, I'm like, but how long did you spend at church? Oh, 2 hours. That's nice. So to like top that off at the end of the day, to have like a communal meal was like, it's still one of my favorite experiences.
Yeah, so Sharice in the comments said 2 women in the church that she grew up in, they sadly passed away from COVID. And they would make dishes like stew, oxtail, and rice and peas. And they also made great carrot cake and brownies. The dessert table was slap every Sunday. So I could definitely co-sign that. And Jessica said our after church meals from the Deep South included spaghetti, fried chicken, green beans, cake, meatloaf, fried fish, and banana pudding. That sounds so good. Can we pause for a second and talk about fish and spaghetti? Because
I was just about to say,
friends love fish and spaghetti. And when we got to college, people from the East Coast and Cali were like, "Wait, that's just not a line in a GDEP song. Like, y'all really eat fish and spaghetti?" Does anybody know like where that dish came from?
So I've asked a lot of people. We've been having this conversation for a couple of years now. And I mean, most of the historians that I know, Tanya might be able to jump into, but most of what I can suss out is it has to do with when cultures cross, right? Like if especially immigrant communities, right? You're talking about those spaghetti, like pasta is foundational in Italian cuisine, right? So Italian immigrants, not a lot of money. Where's everybody who, you know, is going to be living? So take place like New York. The diffusion down south, I mean, you forget the immigration happened, people kind of landed everywhere, right? So if you are in Mississippi to Charleston to New York, so there's going to be this cross-cultural kind of infusion. And so you in community and maybe a tenement building and just in a neighborhood, and those dishes become your taste, right? Like the celebration foods aren't the everyday foods. Like the power of soul food is that it migrated, and it was about this kind of one time a week that was the meeting place, and the dishes that were the joyful celebration things. But your everyday meals were going to be cross-pollinated. Somebody from the Baltimore Sun just reached out because he was talking about a Baltimore holiday tradition where sauerkraut was on the soul food table. He was like, how does that happen? I'm like, yeah, it happens because German immigrants are next to African American people who came or moved and lived. It was all about infusion. And so there are disparate dishes that feel like they don't make sense. But if you are in community with people, I feel like so much of community is less about race and more about socioeconomics, right? Like if you are, you know, in community, in proximity to people, and that looks delicious, I'm going to try it, and it's going to become part of my table as well. That's a really interesting one. I never got it. I personally never experienced it. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. My people are from like central South Carolina, like that sort of North South Carolina border. So I'm unsure that, I mean, I'm certainly, my grandfather sold cars when he was coming up, and so he was in community with a lot of Italian people. But in Newark specifically, like where I grew up, it's a lot of like Portuguese, Italian. It's like this weird mix of immigrant cultures right in this little corridor and the neck of New Jersey. So I don't know. It's a really interesting mix of, but yeah, that of course it would be, of course you would think about those like inexpensive, tasty, quick dishes that you can mix with some fried fish.
I kind of want to I want to position Philadelphia as like the perfect example of this cross pollination that you speak of, because I mean, just in my own upbringing, you know, like you said, on a daily basis, my mom was making fettuccine. My mom was making
Mm-hmm.
was making spaghetti with fried chicken breast in it, like a variation on the chicken parm, but also an amalgamation of fried chicken with spaghetti. We didn't eat fish
Same.
and spaghetti, but
Yeah,
like
same in South Jersey.
yeah, right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like these are some very Philadelphia things. Bologna, you know, if you want to look at the Southeast Pennsylvania, the Quakers, the Dutch, bringing in a German thing like bologna or like liverwurst. Liverwurst was a meat that you could put on a hoagie. You know, when Black people got a hold of hoagies, uh, you know, me growing up, because we didn't eat a whole lot of pork. We didn't eat Italian hoagies. We ate turkey hoagies, but then there was also spin-offs of like not just roasted turkey, not just spicy turkey. There was jerk turkey. If you're in Philadelphia, there's jerk turkey in specific neighborhoods. There's chipotle turkey, because our flavor profile needs that kind of heat. You know what I mean?
Smoked turkey, yeah.
Yep, all this stuff: smoked turkey, jerk turkey, chipotle turkey, sausalito. You know, these different things. What else did we have? We had, I mean, Tanya and I were in an article about pepper pot, which like is bringing in West Indian culture, is bringing in African culture, and incorporating Dutch culture. There's a book that I have called the Pennsylvania Dutch Cookbook, which is a very small pamphlet of a book that's as old as I think it's from the 19th century, that has pepper pot without any credit to the agency of the Black women who were creating this dish, where they were bringing in oxtail. Essentially, it's an oxtail stew with West Indian peppers, and what they did was incorporate potatoes, which is a European thing that the Dutch were growing in Lancaster County, and because of that, and tripe, and because of that, the Dutch were saying this is a Dutch dish, but it's not. You know, it's essentially oxtail stew. So you know, there is this cross cultural. I wouldn't even call it sharing, because like you can't share shit with someone that you don't respect. You know,
they just take shit. You know, it's like, or take
it. You know, like if you don't respect someone, you're not sharing. So it's not a share.
I always say the pepper pot became a melting pot soup once they kind of took it from Campbell's. You know, it's the biggest offender of that. They put macaroni in it and all kind of stuff. It's like, what? But that's America, right? But in terms of the melting pot part, but you're right, giving acknowledgement and credit for when it comes to coming out of a Black food culture. That's I think it's a new day, and I'm, you know, which is why stuff like this kind of work is so important, and this kind of cross pollination, right? Like, you know, I'm just loving this chat thread with recipes, you know, St. Kitts, Barbados, Haiti, like, you know, like growing up as a Black kid and outside of Philly, you know, the diversity of Blackness, you know, and our food and our culture, even the regional nuances of all the different expressions.
I wanted to talk about regional a little bit. So I don't know, Denver, I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I don't know if we're like at the edge of the West and the mid, like we are that state that kind of, so we be confused about, I guess people would consider it Midwest, but it can feel very West Coast.
Southwest, yeah. I've heard it. Yeah,
it can be. It's just like we're right there, that little square that's just right next to all these other different regions. But we have a huge like Latinx and Mexican culture that we are up against, especially growing up in like, you know, more low income communities. Like it was just heavily like just Black and Mexican growing up. So much so like there's like little Mexican stores, and their culture just became so adjacent to ours. That's my mom, she can make like some stuff way better than like if I go to the Mexican place and get it, because it made me think, as you all been talking, it's making me think about the ways in which we can absorb so many different things and then like remix it and bring it into our own dishes. Cause yet my mom, like her green chili, my mom's smothered burritos, they go harder than anything. And then when I came out East, I was just like, why is everything so dry when they make like Mexican food? Like everything, I'm so used to like wet Mexican food. Like everything is smothered, or watching little like Mexican ladies in the Walmart parking lot selling tamales, like it's like deep, like they be going down the street with the cart with the corn with the mayonnaise on it. Like we just grew up adjacent to that. And I think too that I'm learning, because when I went out East, I've learned how Black people make things so differently across the nation. Like until I went to Hampton for undergrad, we made grits with sugar and butter.
Salt and butter.
We made grits with sugar and butter, and you some little toast, some little white bread toast. What? Y'all missing out.
Wait.
So you made porridge.
Porridge, right? That's not like a breakfast cereal.
Listen, we called it grits. Okay, I've been over here 10 years now, so I'm already used to all of this.
I mean,
y'all can keep it, but like, no. When I went to Hampton, I was like, why are you putting like cheese and salt and pepper and on grits?
Savory grits.
Yeah, but now I've adjusted. But it showed me, like, I think because I come from a different region and like what Omar was saying.
Before Colorado, did you guys have some connection to a Great Migration pattern from somewhere?
Yeah, I think I think on the second wave of the Great Migration, my family came from a small town in Texas. So I don't know, maybe Jess could speak to like if sugary grits is a down south thing, but that's how we made it. And it made a couple things that's coming up for me is like just the way regionally I didn't realize that Black people made stuff so different. And a lot of the things that I've been introduced to on the East Coast, this like Caribbean, I didn't have a lot of that growing up in Denver. Like we just had like, all the stuff that I became introduced to over here, Ethiopian food or Jamaican food or Haitian food. Like we ate Mexican food, American food, and Black people food. Like that's all and it wasn't like no diasporic, like Caribbean Black people. It was just straight up, just regular, like North American Negroes,
Right. But you said something really important and interesting. This last thing I'm going to say and hand it back over. You said something really important about how your mom made versions of food from another culture taste better oftentimes, which I think speaks volumes to, and it also connects the dot to the past. And Omar, you can speak to this too. And I know you can also, Therese. We were the cooks of the nation and the national cookery came from them. That's a literal quote from like the early 1900s of some historian. But when you connect that dot about like how many Black people, mostly women, and I don't know if this is part of your heritage or not, but it is part of mine, cooked in other people's homes, and the diversity of the cultures that they were cooking for, Italian, Jewish, whatever, all different kind of white ethnicity, which often kind of gets, paved over just by white, but they have, different stuff. So the same kind of thing, I would taste Black women's versions of things that were so much more seasoned and more flavorful, and then got adapted into my family's food culture. I thought potato pancakes were soul food, and my great aunt had adopted somebody's latke and turned it into like a Black potato pancake, and which like with more flavor, and that's fascinating.
It makes me think back to what Omar was saying earlier about like taste as like in the way that like me, because I didn't really pay attention to cooking, so I kind of missed the boat growing up, but I can clean a hell of a house though. I love to clean, but I am not the cook. So I didn't learn just by being like, so that's why I was struggling with this menu earlier, because I need things to be exactly, I can follow a menu, I can't cook is what I usually say. And I earlier when you were talking about like how you never had to write that down, it made me think about my mom, she wasn't a domestic worker in that way, but I think that maybe she's able to she knows how to cook by like tasting things and being like, oh, I can taste what's in there, and I can go and, oh, okay, they put a little bit of this. Like she don't even need to probably see their recipe. Like, so she could go to the little creamery, which is a real hood, little Mexican spot and be like, oh, okay, I got what they doing here, and then just go home and make your own. So just made me think about what you were saying earlier, Omar, around, yeah, like we don't always learn by like reading something and measuring. We can learn and pass down and remix food just by what we've tasted.
Joyce done started a war around grits. I feel like I can't trust my friend because we are savory grits people over here.
Woo! Savory grits, savory grits.
We get some shirts made because, you know, Savory Hive is going strong, but there are some people in here talking about sugar grits. Sydney, what is going on? Is everything all right at home? What is going on? Why are you eating sugar grits, y'all?
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say no shade because I've enjoyed sugar grits. I've enjoyed savory grits. Actually, when I was a kid, my mom would allow me to pour at least 17 tablespoons of ketchup into my grits. So, yeah. I mean,
that counts as sugary grits because ain't nothing but
right,
sugar.
exactly. Listen, in my opinion, grits is the food of any tossed aside American people. That goes for indigenous Americans, that goes for the descendants of Africans. Like grits belongs to anyone who is not of the Eurocentric idea of what America is. And so like however you eat that, hey, great, more power to you. But I kind of want to
is polenta just fancy grits, Omar?
See, you're hell no. You're about to dip right into the point that I'm about to make. I want to bring together two aspects of the conversation that Joyce and Tanya were bringing together. I've actually experienced pushback from the whole. I like to think of it as like, if we're all familiar with the movie Ratatouille, Blackatouille of things, right? Because I've been a cook and a chef in largely largely just like New American, French entrenched, Italian, Mediterranean kitchens where, you know, like you're taught a way to do a thing and like your body tells you like, oh, this doesn't taste like it has enough seasoning. And then you season it a little bit more. And then the chef comes onto your station and tastes it and says, what did you do? And you like, I lie and say, I didn't do anything. I just like, you know, whatever. It just didn't appease to my taste. And so I had to retrain my tongue to understand a less nuanced palate and learn to enjoy things that were just seasoned with salt and pepper and whatever the flavor of that actual ingredient was, which I certainly believe has its place. And I'm not saying doesn't exist within the diaspora of our cuisine, because you can go to the West Indies and find that fish fresh caught off of a boat is just seasoned with salt and pepper and maybe a little bit of Scotch bonnet without the addition of Old Bay or some kind of seasoned salt or paprika or whatever. I just didn't know it yet, you know? And so, like, you know, in my training, in my my professional culinary training, I didn't accept that Black people, or I didn't understand that Black people didn't quote unquote over season or like add these accents to food, much like how Joyce, you're describing, you know, Black women or matriarchs in your family would like take these burritos and like enhance them. Everyone doesn't feel that way about our palate, you know. We redress things to benefit how we're accustomed to tasting food, but that doesn't always agree with the people that we're actually serving. And I think that like the beautiful parts of our foodways, as people who are constantly in migration, unfortunately, lends to this duality of living and existing in within a culture that's not ours and being steeped and entrenched and dug deep in our own culture. And we create these things that are just more beautiful than the sum of their parts without us, you know. Well, because of us, without us, they just aren't as beautiful. So like the burrito or an enchilada in Denver can be amplified because we understand the European culture, we understand our culture, and we bring those things together and they become tempered. And then thusly amplified because we have this double consciousness, in palate. I think that that's an awesome thing. And so we can have sweet grits, or we can have savory grits, or we can have slightly sweet, slightly savory grits. We can have this gamut or this range or array of flavor profiles based upon um, our experience as a migratory people.
It's a culinary dexterity.
Mm-hmm.
What are you gonna say, Therese?
Oh no, I was thinking about when Omar was sort of starting his thought. I immediately thought about Verna Grosvenor. There's something really particular about the way she framed thinking about our foodways. Like, she understood in the 60s, like, this, what's so great about the rest of the world? What's so great about, these foodways that are supposed to be so much better than what I have right here in South Carolina? Like, what is so good about it? And so she left. She went to Europe and she tasted the world, and she basically figured out that there's nothing new under the sun, and your polenta is my grits and my, like, that there was something particular about when you send to your own culture that it's going to be cross-pollination, it's going to be similarities. I'm glad that, people like, Asha Gomez talking about how, Kerala, India is geographically the same as Atlanta, Georgia, and how you can cook those dishes with agency in this place because the terroir is similar, right? So I don't know, but I also think something about the way Verna Grosvenor thought about food was asking us to be more precious and more beholden to our own culture. It doesn't require anything of you. It doesn't require you to not eat the, the French food you think is dope, or cross-pollinate with the Mexican folks that you're in community with, or taste whatever other culture, but that at the center, right? Like, to sort of hold precious who we are and what culture you come from. Those tastes are going to be with you. They're going to infuse into how you season and the memories that you kind of take with you. But if you just slightly move center, slightly be precious about and be beholden to us first, it sort of, I don't know, it allows you to see our food as more precious than maybe you thought. Like, the thing about Omar's menu that was so beautiful was that these are dishes that a lot of people might be familiar with, right? Like, you might cook your chicken a little differently. You might have, your rice might have a little something different in it. A lot of dishes that people mention in the comments have some tie to most of the menu that Omar shared, but they aren't just this back of the mind memory that you have a taste of. This, like, these are jewels. These are the jewels of our culture, of our foodways that you don't even know you have, right? Like, these are precious memory that is not, it's more than just this sort of offhand thing, right? It's heirloom.
And just a little more on the cross-pollination, Jermaine is at our table, and he said that his grandma's spaghetti, baked ziti, and lasagna slaps. So, and this is a Black woman from upstate. Well, I don't know. We don't call that upstate New York, right, Jermaine? Like, people from New York, they call anything above the Bronx upstate.
That is an eternal fight.
I gotta jump on this one because I know Obden right there. He made it.
I'm like, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Look, geographically, we're 15-minute ride away from the Bronx. I'm tired of people from Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island talk about y'all upstate.
Upstate.
Get a map, okay? It's not that
far. Also, it's below Yonkers, and
thank you. I appreciate that.
That's a somewhat cut off. I don't know. Westchester is not upstate. Even when you get upstaters aren't really sure what's happening.
Yeah,
like, you got to be north of Albany to be upstate, basically.
But regionally, what all these Italian dishes that you guys are calling out are also demographically the greatest concentration of Italian American immigration. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, South Jersey, right? So that's interesting that whatever's happening there. But Jermaine, you talk to that, because that was your dishes. Yeah. What, grandma's spaghetti, ziti, and lasagna? What? I'm trying to hear about that.
So I forget. I believe it was Omar who was speaking to the experience of being a domestic. My grandmother was a domestic for many years, and cooked for different households while she was taking care of, white people's babies and whatnot. And she always worked for Italians. And New Rochelle is a town full of Italians. It's still ran by Italians, which is why I'm looking to find a new place to go, because I can't deal with it. But yeah, so just being in those households and her having that experience of learning from them, whomever she used to cook for at times, and then bringing it back home and actually doing her little own rendition of it. Like a lot of Italians don't mix their sauces with their spaghetti noodles. My grandmother most definitely does. She said it makes no sense to not mix the sauce with it, and puts her hot sauce sausage links in there and whatnot. And I mean, I still haven't found a dish that even comes to comparison to my grandmother's. Actually, if I was good to give it up to someone else, it's actually another Black woman who also my best friend's mother who recently passed. I mean, her dishes were top notch, and she, again, also got recipes from a Italian woman that they've known, but when they touched it, it was something, it was different. Like Italian kids would run to Mrs. Barbara's place and say, I want her chicken parm rather than yours. When she brought it to the, a birthday party or whatever, that was the first thing to go, not whoever else made whatever. So it's just really interesting to hear that everybody, that experience of, and I guess it is to our palates, like you were saying, Omar, but it's interesting when other cultures gravitate towards it too after we get a handle on other recipes from other cultures.
Absolutely. I like 1,000%. Well, the thing about Blackness in America is that Blackness is culture in America. Like whether it be food or the arts or music or whatever, like that's just kind of what it is. I want to give a little bit of context around why specifically to Philadelphia, or maybe if I could speak to the larger Mid-Atlantic region of like why Black Americans probably make so much or eat so much Italian food is because, well, specifically in Philadelphia, there was like a Black community that already existed within the 18th and 19th centuries that they were a part of Philadelphia society. They were free Blacks. There was their own neighborhood called the Seventh Ward, and in the 19th century, European immigration kind of amplified, and Italian and Irish immigration was like probably the largest influx into the port of Philadelphia. And what happened was they looked at their own skin because, well, in Europe they weren't white; they were Italian and they were Irish. But when they came to America, they looked at their own skin and like, wait, we're white, and all these other white people were enjoying the privileges of America, and they became racist as fuck, and were jealous of the freedoms that Black Americans had, and so what happened was they adopted whiteness, they changed their names, and all these different things happened and occurred, and so that they could place themselves in powerful positions in society against the advantages of Black Americans. And so in doing so over the course of like 50, 60, 70 years, obviously we know about Jim Crow laws and all the things that happened against us as a people in America. But Black Americans ended up becoming subservient to whoever was white that could adopt whiteness. And in Philadelphia, there was just a huge influx of Italian immigrants, of Irish immigrants, and they usurped power from powerful Black residents through several means of like political action and civic actions. And it's my best assumption that the domesticity that you talk about, Jermaine, that serving largely Italian households or Irish households meant that Black Americans were introduced to spaghettis and lasagnas and this and that. And also to Obden, I don't know if you know about the Haitian population in Philadelphia in the 19th century, how huge that was, how they also were forced to adopt or be a part of the Black community. But I'm sure they became subservient as well. And maybe I don't know. This is all imaginative and like Afrofuturist, but like thinking about how we have to imagine our histories into the present. You know, these Italian dishes like lasagna and things like that became a part of our tables. You know, growing up because of these like usurpation of power and shifts and things like that. And obviously, I think that like I know that there was Italian immigration into Haiti. But
Omar, if you want to time travel for a minute, though, remember Chef James Hemmings and Teresa. I know you know this. Is arguably one of the first American chefs, an enslaved, man of African heritage, owned by Thomas Jefferson, to bring macaroni to the table, to Thomas Jefferson's table, after cooking in France, and that macaroni that came to France through Italy. I mean, food is such a it doesn't have if food had passports, it would have a lot of stamps on it, right? And so, but macaroni comes real early to America through Black cookery. That's a whole nother conversation. Which is technically Italian, whatever. Yeah. So we didn't get all of it direct from Italian American immigrants.
Only thing I'll add to that is, like, I keep bringing up Frederick Grosvenor. Like, I wish people read her more and thought more about her. But she wrote this book called Thursdays and Every Other Sunday Off. It was, so if Vibration Cooking, which is a book most people know of hers, was like 72 maybe, like I feel like 69, 72, somewhere between there. 76, she wrote Thursdays and Every Other Sunday Off. And it was this, she called it a domestic rap. And I'm like, I love it so much because it's sort of like, she used the language of rap before we had rap music. And like, she was a community with the last poets, and just something about her writing life was just, I am beholden to. But this book was just her sort of, it speaks to what Tanya was talking about in terms of what our imaginations are around domestic work. That migration story, right? Like, we think about people like Anna Lewis, right? She came to New York as a domestic worker. Like that migration story was like, what work could you get? Before we had restaurants in this country, to Omar's point, right? There were, Haitian expats and formerly enslaved people and free men who found this home in culinary life, right? They were butlers, they were tastemakers, they were people who were setting the tables before we had formal restaurants. And so that there's this magical Negro narrative that like sort of puts our food in this mystical place where there's no technique or specificity in terms of like professional agency. And we know that to be just ahistoric, right? And so I really wish people would read Thursdays and Every Other Sunday Off. It's like a political manifesto about the power of domestic workers and these people who held this culture and these foodways. And I don't know, it's so tongue in cheek, like most of her writing is, but it also is saying the words that like, how dare you not lift up, and how dare you not revere and respect these women, largely Black women, who thought about unionizing and thought about the power of their place in this domestic space, and juxtaposed to a time in our country, it doesn't feel too different than now, where we are fighting political wars for just our human rights, that they found this place where they could be expert and be perfect and be joyful. And I don't know, that home where you have as a chef, where you and the food and the kitchen and just sort of this space where you have autonomy, like that's this power in that.
Power,
and so, yeah.
May I ask, in your Black culinary history universe, that do you have a reading list, or on your like,
sure,
not even just like a bibliography, but I'm really loving hearing your perspective on these texts and your take, like, I just really am loving all these texts that you are uplifting and speaking on today. And so yeah, that's coming. So my site has been around for 12 years. We turned 12 in January, but we relaunched at the top of November. So it's a lot more tactile and usable, but that's really a big function of what's next. Like, there's so much
there is scholarship around, right? Like we have the words, it's an embarrassment of riches right now, to have so many people, so many Black voices lending this scholarship to this space. But we have examples that were underread because our culture was under-respected. So I don't know. It's coming next. But top of November, we sort of week to week going to be taking book by book and sort of loving on all of these words we have to sort of help us have a broader vocabulary around our culture and foodways.
I just want to take a quick moment to shout out Jessica, who is like lacing the comment section with all the resources. So if anybody wants to purchase the books that Therese mentioned tonight, links to purchase them are all in the chat. So make sure y'all jump in. There's also articles folks have been dropping into the comments. And so if you're looking for some resources that go beyond this conversation tonight, tab it up because there's a bunch of links in here in the chat. Really quickly, I wanted to go back to something that Joyce said when you talked about going to Hampton and learning about different food culture and thinking about like yesterday, BET, the whole HBCU homecoming, like 24-hour extravaganza, and also thinking about what Omar talking about the ways that Black Caribbean folks in Philly had kind of flattened their culture in some ways. So I'm from Philly, obviously, and I definitely felt the brunt of the flattening of that food, of those specific food cultures. But when I got to my HBCU, all that kind of opened up and I started being exposed to more foods that I had never heard of in my life. Because in Philly, if you Caribbean or even if you African, you just Black. You know what I mean? Like I would go to my homie's house who's Nigerian and it's like, no, we Black. And they weren't eating like anything that was specific to Nigerian culture. It was like, oh no, we eating cheesesteaks and fish He's like, y'all. So when I got to college, when I got to my HBCU, food was a really big part of like helping me understand that like HBCUs are such diverse places because nobody ate the same thing. On top of us having our own music, our own slang, the own way we dress, the own specific way that we dress, there was also like people just eating totally different things that I had never heard of or have never tasted. And so being able to like dorm hop when everybody got, you know, the apartments with the suites, we were able to explore each other's like stories through the foods that people were making, you know, because mom ain't there to make it. So some people be calling their mom and trying to figure out how to make it. And that cultural exchange was so important for me when I was in school. So I just kind of want to just like offer that up because that was a really big cultural experience for me. We are 10 minutes away from it's time to clean up and wash some dishes. But before we go, I did kind of want to talk a little bit about quarantine. Like, what has everybody been making in quarantine? Who, you know, hit the cooking wall and when? And if there's been any like family recipes that you've kind of gone back to and been making a bunch of during this time.
A good one. I'll hop in. It's been really challenging to find, for me, as someone who really enjoys cooking and who enjoys cooking for other people, like for the enjoyment of bringing people together to, you know, talk and break bread. It's been really challenging to find enjoyment in cooking. Like it feels like such a chore now. And, you know, like I'll have little moments where I'm like, okay, all right, I'm back in my groove. Like I can, you know, like I want to cook again, but it's certainly been, it's been challenging. How's it been for y'all?
I feel like I've had the opposite experience where like I was someone that, I mean, even before Meals is Collective Memory, I was always like eating out at places. And during the pandemic, I was just like, not that I'm gonna learn to cook, but it just happened. And part of it was a reprieve from screens, right? So like cooking was the only time that I did not have to really be in front of a computer screen, and I was doing something I needed to do for myself. And I have a lot of anxiety over time. So like if I'm watching a movie, I'm like, oh, I should be working. But if you're cooking, you can't, it's like, I have to cook. So it was like one of those safe spaces in cooking and like basically learning to cook and like eat with my roommate, eat with my girlfriend, because it was the only two people I was seeing for most of the lockdown. It was a nice learning experience because my roommate is a very gentle person. So she was just like, hey, that was okay, but maybe try salt next time. So like, it was like a really wonderful learning experience. But like some of the things I learned to make was like beer bread, tons of pastas. I'm a big fan of soups now. And then right before the pandemic started, my best friend, she got me a slow cooker as a gift. So I've been learning to appreciate how to use that in preparation. And then the last thing I'll mention is I really wanted to learn like the legacy of my family's food. So like I like every once a week or other week or so I learned how to make a very specific Haitian dish. So like Haitian spaghetti, sauce pois avec d'huile, which is just like a bean soup with rice. And I'm working my way up to the braised vegetables. But yeah, during the quarantine, it was just like learning how to be like self-sufficient because you couldn't, I mean, I wasn't ordering out as much.
Speaking of ordering out, Jermaine in the comments said that he's been exploring different cuisines through Uber Eats. So Thai one day, Peruvian another, Italian the next.
Y'all, Blue Apron has been saving my life. Because as y'all have come to learn, I am not the cook amongst us. And so my little go-to taco, my little go-to chili, my little go-to, it just started being, I remember there was one week, I had made like some salmon and veggies, and it just tasted like, I was just like, I can't keep eating like this. Like I don't know how to put flavor. I don't know how to put some flavor. I know how to make stuff. I know how to take care of myself. You know, I know how to nourish my body. I know what nutrients I need. I know what variety of foods I need to eat. But like make something that gonna slap, as Jermaine was saying earlier. Like I don't got that. So Blue Apron has been really exciting for me because there is so many different kinds of flavors or different things. So I'm like getting more into sauces, and so it's been keeping me entertained and excited to, you know, eat. But I feel you, Akima, on the motivation. It can be really challenging, you know. I think it's something about when you're forced to do something versus like when it's a choice, to know that there's really not a lot of other options unless you're trying to spend like mad money every day eating out, which I'm trying to stop doing. So
Cynthia in the comments said her guilty pleasure has been watching cooking and food videos every day. She cooks something every day for herself or her family. And now she's filling the pantry because she plans to cook all winter. I may even try baking more breads, pies, and cakes. The bread economy went up once quarantine started. Everybody on Instagram was making bread and nobody brought me not Nan slice. So when we go back into second lockdown, think of me, your friend that loves bread. Drop some off, please.
Speaking of going second way, have y'all been noticing, for people who maybe are in this, like, I know many of us live in the city. When I went to the grocery store today, stuff was looking a little bare. I started to feel a little anxiety again. I was like, oh Lord, here we go. Like is it just me, or it was stuff was looking a little bare again? Like it looked like people.
No, it was bare.
Okay. I was like, where is everything else? So I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Joe Biden had this quote where he said, "It's going to be a bleak winter," in the last debate. That was like what he said, and so like maybe that's the spark of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, our farmers, like, people who work at slaughterhouse, like people have been, fishermen, like people are being impacted. New York, I mean, if you're on the East Coast and certainly in New York, so much of our food is, imported. And I feel like, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting pandemic winter.
Jessica at the table said some hit dishes I made during quarantine: lobster mac and cheese, salmon croquettes, banana bread, barbecue baked beans with ground turkey. Again, I will give y'all my address. Mail me the plates. Because if I got to cook something else in my kitchen, I'm going to burst into tears. Even though I did great with the collard greens and the mustards from Omar's recipe. But yeah, Jessica, you lacing it.
Yeah, I'm relating to Jessica. I've been channeling my ancestors, our ancestors, kind of throwing down. I'm not gonna tease y'all. I'll save that for another thing. But I gotta connect with you, Jessica. Swap some recipes, maybe. I need banana bread recipe.
I had to learn how to because like, I've been cooking professionally for like 14 years. I had to learn how to be a home cook again. Like, I mean, don't invite me to your kitchen. I'm going to make a big ass mess. I'm going to set off your smoke alarm. I'm going to do all these things because, like, you know, the benefit of working in like a fine dining kitchen is that like you have these exhaust systems and everything works like tip top shape and all this stuff. And so like me having to like cook at home again was like adjusting to equipment and like shopping at supermarkets and all these like random things. My favorite thing at the beginning of quarantine in April was my mom was making banana bread. Again, because I mean she works so much because she hasn't been able to work so much. She started just kind of like baking again. So I was reminded of her banana bread. There was one point like literally where I ate the same thing for like 3 weeks straight. It was like greens every day and sardines on toast, and I was eating my mom's banana bread like every day for like 21 straight days. And so it was me kind of just readjusting to not having this air of professionalism around what I served or what I ate, because the benefit of also like working in professional kitchens is that like I'm never hungry. I get to eat foie gras because I'm cooking it every goddamn day, you know? And then afterwards we go to the bar and like drink and then go to sleep and then wake up and cook foie gras again for 12 straight hours. So it was that for me.
I just want to offer that I would love it if people would think a little bit about the feeling that you all are having about cooking at home, and sort of transfer that appreciation to hospitality workers. I've been thinking a lot about quarantine. For me has been sort of like I've been a private chef for the last 8 years, and so the home kitchen as a professional space has been interesting. But this is the first time in my life, in my professional life, that I've been home to actually feed myself. And I've really been considering like the power in that. Like I would find myself in kitchens all day long full of beautiful food and not actually be feeding myself with the same kind of care. And so I guess I would love it if because I mean, I don't know, I may be more optimistic about folks the food system itself, I think, will get us through the winter just because capitalism. I feel like we're gonna. I mean, I don't feel so bleak about the prospects of feeding ourselves through the winter. But I guess I'm just wondering if people. I'm hoping that people maybe think more preciously about the restaurant space as not this like all omnipresent public trust. Like these are people's business and livelihoods, and we sacrifice a lot to do this work and to sort of be in a professional space to provide service to the public. And a lot of your favorite restaurants are going to struggle through to be with you and be there for you during the winter. And so perhaps just show a little care, think a little more preciously about the folks who are standing their ground, because yes, it's a business, but they also realize that there's a social contract that we have with this industry, and everything from the supermarket workers to the folks who are trucking our food around the country to it's a whole ecosystem that exists because the will of these folks who put their spirits into this work make it so.
Thank you so much for offering that up, Therese. And just like everybody, just continue to keep that in mind. Like people are risking their lives to feed us every day. So we're doing the Ubers and we're doing the Seamless and all that. Like tipping the drivers, because, you know, like it might seem dramatic, but that's really what's happening. Folks are risking their lives so that we can have a night off from cooking. So, Surae, thank you so much for bringing that up. And just in that same vein, we wanted to, before we officially wrap the pre-close, we wanted to play a little clip from Cheryl Smith, again, who is the owner of Cheryl's Global Soul, someone who is like been powering through this really hard time, and has been feeding Brooklyn for what, like 2 decades now. And so we just wanted to kind of offer up her voice before we wrap dinner tonight. So, Open.
Started usually Saturday with marinating stuff, even getting roast ready. But Sunday dinner, right? Sunday dinner was the one where we, for sure, everybody sat down to dinner Sunday, because we would go to church in the morning, and Sunday dinner was earlier. So we would start with it was a complete meal with like salad, you know, entree, and usually there was some kind of dessert. So it was the meal where, you know, we would all sit as a family, and occasionally friends would pop by. So it was like the more sumptuous meal. But you'd have, you know, she'd do the stewed chicken, or she'd do a pot roast, or, you know, the more island type food. So you'd always have rice and peas, you know, and then later as we were growing up, you know, we would have more the traditional breakfast with ackee and saltfish and boiled yams and bananas and plantains, because that wasn't an everyday thing. I mean, porridge, you know, porridge was an everyday thing. Cornmeal, oats, whatever. That was, you know, stuff she would make for us before we went to school, was, you know, things that would get us out the door in the morning. But on the weekend, besides soup on Saturday, then the really beautiful Sunday dinner. And I remember just a lot of conversation around that table, because, you know, that was the one day we didn't have to go anywhere. Once we were done with church, it was like home, and entertain people if they came over. If it was just us, lay around in my parents' bedroom just watching old movies, and, you know, yeah, Sundays was a beautiful thing.
Well, I think.
Thanks, Obden, for that clip. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining us at the dinner table tonight. I hope you walked away with, you know, some memories you hadn't thought about around food in your family, walking away with some resources. Again, thanks to Jessica in the comments. And just like the way we were able to commune tonight, even though we were all online and we're all in our separate homes, there was still a closeness that was felt. So I appreciate everyone for sharing their stories, for bringing such great energy. And again, Joyce, you killed the weekend. Like, I mean, do it every time.
Remarks. Thank you. I do have some, when you're ready, I'll have some closing remarks since Saya, you've been denying us, boo. You've been denying us. Look at how beautiful. Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to say thank you, Joyce, and thank you, everyone. This was a beautiful evening, and I also got a whole lot out of it. And yeah, just wanted to say hello.
Oh, thank you, Saya.
And to Omar and to Race, thank you so much for just all you do in general, and just for bringing so much to the conversation tonight, grounding our convo in history, which is super important, and also just being amazing and just dope, and also just so like approachable as well, in the ways that you're dispersing the history, because I think a lot of times folks can be a little heady, and it can not feel like accessible to people. So like, thank you for that as well. Obden, always my favorite work wife. Thanks for always being down and for you know, birthing Mills' collective memory with me, and hopefully that we'll continue to have these conversations regardless of our COVID status, so we can still convene about and around food. So Joyce, hand it over to you.
Yeah, so before we go, I just have some closing remarks as this concludes our 2-day experience. I'm gonna start by, I think I have the ability to share my screen. So y'all have already seen me. I'm gonna just, you'll hear my voice, and then I'll come back to, you know, give thanks. I guess I feel like since we're in the spirit, Stephanie kind of sends us in that way. There's so much thanks to be given, right? I'm just so grateful to being able to have this opportunity to do this kind of work. As you were saying, Teresa, about even just the hospitality work, is the fact that I'm able to do work right now in this time period is a blessing, and to do this type of work I'm just so grateful for my ancestors and the stars aligning for me to be able this program. I talked about it a bit yesterday at the opening remarks. This program has went through so many different challenges to be able to make its way to being here. And I'm just grateful for the work. I'm grateful for all of you who have contributed your time, your energy, your brilliance, your art, your thinking, your research. I give thanks for everybody who Reggie helped you move a table over to Kingsborough, to like distribute the gift cards, to like the person who took our temperature. What's the news? Like when we came to film on site, everybody who has a hand in, I think his name's Mark, right? The new security person. Yeah, Mark. I was like, let's make sure I get his name. Just everyone who plays a small part, and that we don't often get to see, but like, without those roles, like the thing that we do forward facing wouldn't be able to be possible. And so I said something on our event page where I gave thanks to a lot of people who have helped behind the scenes. I called it the section Our Legacy Together, because so much of this work is communal and it is collaborative. And so there's a lot of thanks to give. I definitely want to give a shout out to, to Stephanie, to you all for leading this. There's just to Kima Zane and Raina, who just earlier today shared some beautiful art. There's just so much gratitude in my heart, and definitely would not be remiss not to thank our funders. So I'm gonna share my screen on that note so we can get into giving a little thanks there. I just wanted to give a shout out to all of our funders. This legacy project has been a 3-year initiative that has been heavily funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation, with additional support from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and the William R. Keenan Jr. Charitable Trust. We truly give thanks for the support that all of these funders have provided to us. This work does not just happen by itself. It's been able to put food on my table. I've been able to bring opportunity to people in my network, in my community, by having them be a part of this program. And just being able to share this work out into the world. We really give thanks for them believing in this way of doing this work, right? And that's something is a segue to the last little part that I wanted to share around. I'm going to bring something up from my archive for y'all if it wants to. So I have a long journey with Weeksville Heritage Center. I have been in and around Weeksville Heritage Center since I was an intern in 2011. And when I graduated library school, Weeksville was my first job. I worked as a project archivist. And when I started my business in 2017, Archival Alchemy, Weeksville was my first client. So to say that Weeksville is near and dear to my heart is just as best I could do of my love and my, the way in which this space has really shaped and rooted my practice as an archivist and even as an artist. But I found it interesting. I forgot about this, y'all. Like in 2017, when I came back to Weeksville to as them being my client and to help with the Legacy Project, and understanding that I was going to be helping with public programming, I wanted to refresh my memory about some of the facts around Weeksville and some of the information that I maybe had lost, having been there in like a few years. And so I went back through my old records and I found this, and I was like, wait a minute. So I wrote a whole paper project called Reviving the Document, Public Programming and Archives. And I don't think public programming was like on my radar. So this is like just deep, like I took journal notes and stuff about everything I was observing, and it was a point in time. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. It was a point in time when I don't think I really realized that I would resonate with programming in this way. Like I just thought I'd be more just doing more traditional archival stuff like processing collections and da. But to have come back here, and I think I've started to realize like what I saw then, because Weeksville still has different things that it has to get together, you know, like really being able to get its resource center open so that way the collections that it does have can become accessible and different things like that, that with it being a small team and having different hurdles, there's always been this innovation and this creative ways around going to share this history and to bring it to life. And I remember them doing sugar water toast on the 5th of July, and like how much history was embedded in that act, and like just going into the houses and being like, oh, they like this house interpretation came from an oral history that they did with one of the remaining like connections to some of the older families from historic Weeksville. Just seeing the ways in which the history became sensed and felt and was around us, and that really influenced me in ways that I didn't realize until I returned back to do this work. And it made me so much in my career that I've seen where archives continue to not feel accessible and continue to not feel like people are grasping what it is that it can be and what it can do. I really do believe in the power of public programming to activate and interpret and enhance archives. Like I just think that there's so much that we can convey in this format, in this space, that a finding aid can't really do, if you even know what a finding aid is, you know. And I am just honored that I get to do this type of work. And this weekend has been one of the most fulfilling experiences in my career, to be able to bring all these amazing people together and to talk about, I mean, the full spectrum. We done talked about sugary grits and like somebody's ancestors' photographs in the Peabody at the Harvard. We had the babies out here rap. Like we have done it all. We had this amazing interpretive art, and it just has been so fulfilling. And I think something that happens a lot in Weeksville, like a lot of people don't know about how dope it is and how amazing this work is that we're doing. And I still give my all to it. If there's 4 people here, if there's 400 people here, like the work, the rigor will sustain and will be preserved and will reach people, if it's in this moment or if it's in 2 years from now. And so I still put my all into it, how regardless who is here or not. But I do think that you know, there is a way in which what am I trying to say? I appreciate the intimacy that because there hasn't been so much that people know, there's a lot of intimacy that's built around Weeksville. And so we have like, we could be this small group of people right now, but like, this was a fun, like I enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed our time together. And that always happens at Weeksville. There's like, remember that one time, Obden, it was so sad. We were like, where's everybody at? But we had an awesome time because the spirit of it is just so contagious. It can be felt even when we're not on site, even when we're in a virtual meeting space, like it's still prevalent and is palpable. And so I love the intimacy of it, but I also would love for Weeksville to be highlighted in the ways that it deserves to be, you know. And so what I am grateful for, the ways in which life has moved in this direction for this program to be virtual, is that I see this weekend as an unveiling of so much conversations that should and will continue. And so I hope that you all will continue to engage by, if you haven't, you know, joined the mailing list, and to keep track of some of the things that Weeksville has coming up. Obden has an oral history workshop coming up next week. On next week, well, Wednesday, on like, I think November 14th, they're having, you know, can capitalism feed us? Like, there's just so many dope programs that come up, and I'm really going to be thinking about lots of ways. There's all these rich conversations. Yesterday was just blew my mind, the stuff we were talking about and the stuff we were doing. And so I love this conversation. So I just want us, for those of us who were honored, are blessed, I would say, to be able to gather, for us to continue to figure out how we share these dialogues out, because I do think that more people would be interested in engaging these topics. And so I'm going to be doing my part, thinking about how we document and record what we've shared over this weekend, and be able to make that into content that people can continue to engage. But please do help spread the word. You know, if you're on that mailing list, we'll let you know when stuff's up. If you came to other things throughout the weekend and you want to just, you know, share out, we would appreciate that. And I think that, let me get, you know, I'm a thoroughbred, so I'm just like, let me see if I hit all the notes. I hit all the notes, y'all. I've done my job. Y'all done y'all. Appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you so much. Yes, I think that's it. I don't know if somebody got like a real Black way to send us off. You know, yesterday a child dragged me for her money. So I don't know if anybody can top that, but like, if you want to try, you know, yesterday one of the young presenters was like, Joyce, where's my gift card? And I'm like, sis, I'm a little backed up logistically. I got you on Wednesday, but she was like, this has been nice and kumbaya, but where's my gift card? So I don't know. That was just a very Black send off yesterday. I loved it. And so I don't know who got us today. I have one. Oh, you got one, Jermaine? You got us? Okay.
Yeah, I think I got us. If everybody knows the one scene, and Joyce, you know what I'm about to point to, the one scene in Poetic Justice when Tupac and Janet and her friend Regina King pulled up to that family reunion, and he was like, "You think they're gonna let us?" Oh, did mine internet? He was like, "You think they're gonna let us bar over there?" He was like, "We Black, we all family." That's how I feel. Like with all of us being able to, we all family, y'all. Like anytime we come into these spaces or whatever, let's share. Let's like always keep in mind that we are amongst each other as a part of one ancestral group. And let's stick together throughout all these processes of trying to learn and grow and be in this space with each other and create this safe space for each other. So we all family, and I appreciate all of y'all that definitely come to this space and share your vulnerabilities with us too, because as we do that, we can always grow.
Thank you, Jermaine. So Kwame, if you want to stop the recording and the live, and you can make me host, and if anybody wants to, you know, kiki for a little bit, I'm gonna just